Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are. Thank you for joining me again for another live Q&A session here on my channel. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Angela. I am a full-time voiceover artist and audiobook narrator. And my channel is dedicated to those of you just getting started out in this wonderful, wonderful world. Why do I always have trouble saying that? Wonderful world of voiceover and audiobook narration. And through my channel, I share with you tips, tricks, techniques, things that I do every day in my own voiceover business. And then we get together in these weekly chats and I go into tangents and stumble over my words like a normal human. I speak words good. Anyway, if you're not new here, then you know every week we have a new poll, and that is usually the topic of today. And the poll is, how comfortable are you with your audiobook production process? And that includes, you get the job, you're right? You get an offer, you and an author come to an agreement and start the process of creating an audiobook. What do I do with this thing, right? How do I format this book? How do I prep the manuscript? That's what we're talking about today. And as you know, these questions, or these topics rather, come from the questions I get in the weeks preceding when we have this conversation. So if you have questions or you would like insight, not only from me, but from everyone here in the chat, ask the questions. If you're watching this in Team Replay, then post your questions into the comments. If you're here now in the live chat, then put your questions in the chat. And then we can touch on those too. Even though the topic of today is audiobook formatting and prepping, if you have a question about something else, go ahead and ask it. Take advantage of not only me, but everyone else here in the chat and ask the questions. You're not limited to just today's topic. So ask away. That's why we do this. So back to the poll. Kind of took a left turn there. How comfortable are you with your audiobook production process? It looks like a pretty even split. So the options are 38% of you said very comfortable, which is good. So those of you in that category can help me out today and offer up your insight, your techniques, your tips, whatever it is that you do in the manuscript prepping process or formatting process as we go along today. 33% of you said not very comfortable, and then 29% of you said I have no clue what to do. And that's perfectly fine because you're not expected to know everything in the beginning, right? You don't know what you don't know. You don't know what you need to know unless you ask the questions, right? So for those of you that are in the not very comfortable and I have no clue what to do, I'm hoping that something said today can help push you forward and get you out of that, either that stuck stage or that procrastinating stage, and get you moving forward. So what do? You have a manuscript, and I'll tell you, one question that I get a lot is, once I have the manuscript, do I read through it first? And I think you should. There may be some instances where you might get away with not having to, if it's maybe straightforward self-help, something not very technical, or something more or less like commentary, perhaps. Because even in those instances, you may wanna read through it just to see if there are any topics that you are unfamiliar with or words you need to look up the pronunciation of or the meaning of, so you sound like you know what you're talking about, right? But for the majority of the books that you get, you should definitely read through them first, and especially with fiction, because you want to get an idea of who all the characters are, right? Is the book written from first person, third person? Um, do any of the characters have particular personalities that remind you of, characters in books, shows, movies? Do they have accents? Do they use certain dialects? Do they have what kind of attitudes and personalities do they have? And then start building character sheets as you go along. And then in also through that initial read through, if you have any questions about, let's just say, for example, this is a fantasy book and it has names of places and people that may be difficult to pronounce. You definitely might want to have the author help you out with the correct pronunciation of those places. Um, what was the other thing that I was just going to touch on in terms of characters? The character sheet. Um, it would help to take notes on each character, meaning background, who they are related to the antagonist, protagonist, the main characters, whomever. Accents again, dialects. If they remind you of someone from a movie or from a show, then you could even put a picture of that person in the character sheet to remind you. If you have questions about character voice development, right? A particular voice for a particular character, and you're not quite sure if it's going to work or not, then, I mean, when in doubt, ask the author. This is a team effort, and a lot of the times the author will rely on you as the professional to come up with these things, but authors will have input. And, if you think about the author spending months, if not years, writing this book, poring over it, blood, sweat, and tears, investing money into editors and all of the things, they're going to have input on these character voices too. So, um, the prep work is definitely going to be needed. Oh, that was the other thing. Highlighting. Going through your manuscript, and as you're developing these characters or taking notes on these characters, you can go through and assign each character's dialogue in a different color or different highlight. So as you're narrating through, you can see like whose voice is coming up, right? As you're reading through, you can see the pink and you're like, oh, okay, that's the main female character. And then you see the blue, that's the main male character, so on and so forth. So at a glance, your brain has a moment to go, okay, switch into that next voice. Um, that's a good reason to read through it. Not only that, but the plot, when to build tension or, if there's something coming up, when to leave dramatic pauses because it's coming up next, so on and so forth. There's nothing worse than discovering that your main character has a Scottish accent in chapter 10. If you haven't read through it before and knew that he had a Scottish accent. And so then now if you didn't read through it before, you have to go back and re-record the first 10 chapters in a Scottish accent. So it's always a good idea to read through the book first. Also, the pronunciation or any other notes that you have for yourself, you can mark up the manuscript as well. Another question I get a lot is, should I print out the manuscript? And ideally, ultimately do whatever works for you, but you don't have to print out a bunch of paper if you don't need to. Most authors, if not all, will have a digital copy of their manuscript. I would think they would all have a digital copy of their manuscript. They will send that to you in typically either a PDF or a Word document. Um, if they don't have it in that format and they have it only as an EPUB or something like that, cloudconvert.com is a great website to use where you can plug in just about any format of any kind of file and ask it to convert it into something else. So if the client sends you an EPUB document, you can put it into Cloud Convert, ask it to change it into either a Word doc or a PDF, depending on what you have available to you. And you upload it into there and it'll convert it and spit it back out, and then you download it and then you get to work. So that's a great helpful tip. And Cloud Convert it's free. It's free to use. It's saved me many times. Um, what else? What else? What else? In terms of starting the audiobook, using the table of contents as a guide to break up the different files, because the audiobook is not going to be one continuous file. Every separate section is going to be a different file. So you'll have the opening credits. There's usually an introduction or preface, acknowledgments, something like that. And then chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, so on and so forth down the line. And then the prologue about the author. And typically the about the author or acknowledgments, dedication, things that aren't typically included in an audiobook, ask the author if they want those included as well. Some do, some don't. But what else is there? Oh, like a prologue, usually at the end. Citations and references are not included in an audiobook. Glossaries are not included in an audiobook. Is there anything else that's typically included in the end? If I'm forgetting anything, just ask. And then after all of those, you'll have the closing credits, and then there's usually a retail sample. And the retail sample is, I typically use like a 5-minute section of the introduction, because that's usually a snapshot of what is going to be learned, or what the book is about. So I'll typically use a little snippet of the introduction for the retail sample. What else? What else? What else? If there's anything I'm forgetting or anything you have a question about, please put it in the chat. But I'm sure we'll come up with other stuff. I'm sure I'm forgetting something. Anyway, let's go to the comments and see if I have forgotten anything. I mean, it's still kind of early for me. I need coffee. More coffee. I know we have a handful of our usual chat members are on the Audiobooks at Sea cruise ship right now, so it might be a little bit lighter than normal in the chat, but we'll see who's here. Who's here? Peak Parables Productions is here first. How you doing, Peak Parables? Oh, hi, Angela. I beat Caesar for once. Barely by a minute. Hey, Caesar. Oh, hi, Angela. I think I recall saying that I was very comfortable with my processing last year. Turns out it could have gotten better, and it did. So I'm still very comfortable with my processing. Peak Parable says, with formatting audiobooks, I have found the faults I did with initial recording made the editing much worse. I had the mindset of just fix it with editing. I think we all do that because, and I say this a lot to people. I find myself saying this a lot. As cliche as it sounds, and believe me, it does work. All of the voices, all of the, the flashing red lights in your mind when you start recording really anything for voiceover or audiobooks, don't breathe too much, or your mouth is very sticky, or don't forget to do this, or is it too loud in here, or am I going to have to re-record that because it stinks? All of that stuff, you have to leave it outside your studio. You have to just allow your mind to fully focus on what you're narrating. You have to. Because if you're distracted thinking about all of the things that you're doing wrong while you're recording, is it's gonna completely take away from your job, and your job is to make an engaging audiobook, right? And sometimes you can even hear that doubt because it sounds like you're sort of holding back, like you're questioning everything that you're saying instead of just giving it your all, because you're too busy focused on all the things, all the little voices in your head telling you that you're not doing something right or you're doing too much or not enough. You have to find a way to leave all of that outside your studio and just fully focus on your job. And your job is to make a compelling audiobook. I know it's hard. I know it's hard, but ultimately that's what you want to do. Caesar says, also good job, Peak Parables. I learned a few things from other audio engineers, integrated their techniques into my process, and have garnered excellent results, which I now use on the daily. Can you share any of those, Caesar? Peak Parable says, it took more time, but recording, it made the process of editing much easier after I knew what to look for. My biggest dumb mistake on my first book is recording with mic in the wrong direction. And don't feel bad about that. For all of you just getting started and are just purchasing or have had just purchased a new microphone, typically there is, if it's not the shotguns like my microphone, not so much. I mean, it's kind of obvious which side is the front because there's a plug on one end and then but for some of the mics that sort of look like the common, like what you would think of when you hear microphone, it's got two sides. Some are omnidirectional, some are unidirectional, but if there's a front, it'll usually have a gold dot to indicate what is the front. Why they don't just put front and back on the microphones, I don't know. But the gold dot is usually the front. And I know you've probably noticed, or maybe you haven't, depending on what generation you're from, but we used to get owner's manuals or reference manuals or instructions of some sort with electronics. Not so much anymore. You usually have to go to their website and download this gigantic PDF, which nobody does, right? If they could at least include like a quick start guide that says, this is the front, this is the back, but they don't. They expect you to go to their website and download this gigantic PDF that no one does. No one's going to read it. So just note for you, the gold dot indicates front. And don't feel bad if you've been talking into the wrong side of the microphone, because a lot of people do it because of the lack of information. So don't feel bad. Don't feel bad. Caesar says, I've also worked on duets, which actually requires even more work. And we're going to be talking about that this week, actually, in my Platinum group about dual and duet narrations. I've also integrated analog hardware into my workflow. So that's a whole other kettle of fish. All in all, I'm having a lot of fun. You should be, Caesar. You put in a lot of hard work, still do every day. You should be seeing the rewards from that. That said, hello, everyone. I scored my first non-spicy book today on Japanese Samurai Honor Code. Interesting. I'd love to hear that one. I'm beyond excited. You should be. Got the lead from my website contact form. Did you ask them how they found your website? Was it like a Google search, or did someone refer them? Did they see your social media? How did they get to your website? Inquiring minds want to know, Caesar. Rustic Hillbilly is here. Good morning. Say good morning to, or congrats to Caesar. Rightfully so. Caesar says, Peak Parables. Wow. You know what? I've done that too. Record with the mic backwards. Seriously, mic should be less symmetrical. My cup of tea says, morning, y'all. Glad to be here today with you. Pamela says, hey, Pam, says heading toward a coffee pot even as you speak. Yes. Coffee is good. Anne is here. Hey, Anne. I said very comfortable, but I'm always looking for ways to streamline processes. And that is definitely the way we should be looking at it. Because I'm sure, as you're well aware, when we first start out with audiobooks, producing audiobooks, it takes a long time. Even if it's a short book, what should take you maybe, let's just say, maybe like 3 hours finished, could take you 20 hours, right? To get done with all the narration, the editing, the mastering, the formatting. And you shouldn't be hard on yourself if it does, because the first book is usually the hardest. That's where you learn typically the most. And learning takes time, and that's okay. As you continue to move forward and as you continue to produce more audiobooks, the more little shortcuts or ways to streamline your process you will find and integrate. And that's where, if you join groups, workshops, online classes, get with mentors, and then they can introduce ways or help you find new ways to streamline or make a bunch of micros into a macro, right? Combine multiple steps into one step. I mean, every little thing that you can do to save yourself some time and some effort going forward, you will discover and integrate as you go forward. As I always say, it's in the doing that we learn the most and continue to get better. So if you never get started, and if you get stuck in that procrastinating stage, then you'll never get to the doing part. You'll learn so much more and grow so much more in the doing. So you have to get to the doing. You have to just get started and do it. Okay, tangent over. Jim said, could do better at recognizing and removing mouth noises in the spectral analyzer. I can remove pops in the waveform side, but don't know this stuff. It sounds like you're doing just fine, Jim. Because we're friends, I'm going to tell you, I think you overthink a lot. I think you know enough. I think you know where to find information. I think you know what to do most of the time, but I think you either second guess or overthink, Jim. As we say, he has Adobe Audition, and you can use a healing brush to remove individual mouth clicks in your waveform or in the spectral. But there is a plugin that we've talked about many times here on my channel, and that is from Isotope RX. I think, is it RX 11 now? Isotope, izotope.com. You're looking for the RX bundle of plugins. And there's 3 different bundles. There's the Elements, Standard, and Advanced. And in the Standard and Advanced bundle, there is a plugin called Mouth Declick. Not the declick, the Mouth Declick. That singular plugin in that bundle, either one of those bundles of plugins, amongst many other fantastic plugins like a de-esser and a noise reducer and things like that, deplosive. The Mouth Declick is worth that bundle price over and over and over. Trust me, especially if you have a sticky mouth. Once I had that plugin, it had cut my editing down like 80% of, having to manually remove all the mouth noise. Because I've tried everything. We all have mouth noise, and that's fine. It's just part of being human, right? But if you've tried like the green apples, you've tried staying hydrated, brushing your teeth throughout the recording process, you've tried everything and you still have a lot of mouth noise, that plugin will definitely help you. And they're not cheap. They have sales all the time, but if you happen to purchase it without finding it in the time of a sale, it's still worth that purchase price because that plugin will be used on every single voiceover job, audiobook file, everything that you do from that day forward. And it'll save you so much time, trust me. It's worth the investment. It was for me anyway. Angel says, good morning. Good morning, Angel. I'm glad you're here. Seize the day says, how many samples should my ACX profile have? That's going to depend on what kind of genres of books you're interested in making yourself available for. If you're, let's just say, for example, you only want to do spicy books. So then you want to have probably a handful, 2, 3, 4 samples of different tones for spicy books, right? You want to have a sample that's male and your male and female voice, perhaps having dialogue. Another one where there's tension, another one where there's like maybe lightheartedness, another one where there's a little bit of a romance going on, like romantic emotions, right? You're trying to give the authors a taste of what you can do. Now, if you're interested in doing romance, children's books, sci-fi, then you want to have 2 or 3 of each different kind of genre. There isn't a cap on how many samples you can have, so flood it. But just remember to parse them out, right? Don't dump them all at once. Put in a few on Monday, put in a few on Tuesday, put in a few on Wednesday, and then at whatever interval, start to recycle them, right? Take out older ones and replace them with new ones, or just take them all out together and just kind of put them back in there again once a week, once a month, whatever interval you choose. And that will essentially keep you at the top of the list, right? Just like Amazon, right? You want to stay on the pages of the first and second pages of the search. But there isn't a cap, so go crazy. But I would say 2 or 3 of each genre in varying tones or situations. Reading Time with Poppy said, I had the choice between barely on time and a little late with donuts. I mean, as long as there's donuts, we're good. Caesar says, mitigating mouth noise before the recording session is valuable and time-saving, but I can understand if this is challenging. That said, invest in Isotope RX11 Standard. It'll pay for itself. Regarding Isotope, if you can't pay the full price up front, consider their $20 monthly. Then wait for a sale. This is what I did, and I'm averaging 3 to 5 projects a month, so the cost to earning evens out. Caesar then says to Anne, you have a very good understanding of the process, and I really, really appreciate that because it allows us to communicate in the same language, mostly. I do decipher some of the jargon. Erica Carr says, off today's topic, I would like to learn more in a future live session, or today would be cool too. How do you visually see on the screen that there is a breath or problem if you're not hearing it? Depending on which DAW you use, excuse me. I know Adobe Audition and Audacity have a spectral display. On the spectral display, you can see a whole lot more than you could on just a basic waveform. So depending on the DAW that you're using, and if there's a way to check your DAW to see if there is a spectral view option opposed to just the waveform, that would be ideal. It'll help you see issues that are potential issues that you can't see on just a waveform. So if you're looking for mouth noise, if you're looking for like throat gurgles in a breath or something like that that you can see in the spectral display, then that will help you in the editing process. But that is how you see these things, is in the spectral display. 16 Voyeur says, "Hi, Angela." Hi. "How should I build a profile when I have no acting or theater experience?" That's a great question. And I always tell people, whatever profile, bio, about me that you're building on whatever platform it is, don't ever put in there that you're brand new. Don't ever note that you're new to the platform, that you're new to this experience. You're not new to audiobook narration. Focus more on your equipment. Make it more customer centric. How can I solve the customer's problem? So, for example, I have studio quality equipment with a home based studio for quick and fast turnaround. I'm available for questions right now. Please reach out if you need to, that sort of thing. But you're not mentioning that you're brand new. And don't get me wrong, I'm all about transparency and being open and honest with a client, because it's teamwork. You're part of a team, and you want to make sure that, you're open, honest, transparent, so things can get done, right? You're building a rapport with them. But telling somebody that you're brand new before you even have the opportunity to start building that rapport might inadvertently send the wrong message. It might tell that potential client that you're inept, essentially, that you don't know what you're doing. And so that trust and faith that you could have been building with them is now completely gone, because they get the intention that you don't know what you're doing, that you won't be able to help them in the way that they need, even though you do have enough experience at this point to complete the job or to do what it is that they're asking you to do. But you just saying that you're brand new just inadvertently gives it a negative connotation, right? So instead, focus more on your equipment, how you can solve their problem, how available you are. That's what I would do. Jim says, "Have heard both Scottish and British accents and don't really hear much difference between the two." There's a little bit of a difference between two. I mean, I think the more that you hear accents, the more you'll start to pick up on those little nuances. Reading Time with Poppy says, "When reading to my kids, I find my ability to anticipate correct voices or tone gets worse and later it gets." Get your sleep, everybody. Yes. Remember that if you're voice acting, producing audiobooks, your body is your instrument. Your body is the tool. I mean, apart from all of the obvious hardware, software that you're using, but this is the main instrument. So take care of it. Take your vitamins, get your exercise, hydrate, get your rest. Take care of it. You should be anyway, but even more so if you're using it for your career, if it's your main tool, take care of it. Marilee Ann says, "What to do if you finally get a manuscript to VO for, but the topic structure and voice format it needs to be done and it's never something you are interested in. Do you VO it anyway or pass?" I think what you're meaning is if it's word salad, if it's not written well in a way that makes sense to you, or if it's in God, I wish this would stop. Or if it's something you have a problem with ethically, morally, something you just don't agree with, you don't have to do it. This question comes from the mindset shift from employee to business owner. If you're presented with something, it's your prerogative to decide what to do with it. You don't have to do it. They don't they don't employ you. You're not on their timesheet. You are the boss. You get to make that decision. So if it doesn't feel right, your spidey senses are tingling, something is telling you to not do it, or you just don't agree with what is going on there, you have every right to say no, thank you. Thank you for considering me, but no, thank you. I'm not comfortable with this topic. I'm too busy. I mean, whatever it is that you want to say, but it's up to you if you want to do it or not. Or if you're in a place where you're just going to bite the bullet and take the job anyway because you really, really need the income, you can do that too. I mean, it's up to you what to do with it. You don't have to do it. You don't have to take every job that's offered to you. Mm-mm. Nope. Caesar says that's interesting. They're quite distinct from each other. The British accent also varies from region to region, and that can mostly be identified as well. Very true, Caesar. However, not everybody has the ear for the distinction yet, but I think Jim will definitely get there. Once he starts to listen to them more or hear them more, I think he'll start to pick up on the differences. Hey, Joel, doing better. Still have a little bit of a rasp, but getting better. Reading Time with Poppy says to Jim, think Bond villain accent versus side characters in Brave. Oh, those are very different. Caesar says, in lieu of audiobooks at sea, I'm doing audiobooks in a hot, soundproof room, and I'm having a blast. In fact, I need a blast of sweet, cold air. How many bottles of sriracha have you got in your studio with you right now, Caesar? uh, Ron Noel says, hello from Grand Haven, Michigan. Good morning. Just starting to submit auditions. Good for you. Good for you. Speaking of sweet air, it's getting warm in here. It's starting to get warm in the desert. It's almost time for air conditioner time. It's too early. It is what it is. Anne said to Caesar, I feel like the process is getting more ingrained, but I still flip flop high pass filter and low pass filter most times. Yum, 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 yum. Caesar says, can I share my techniques? Absolutely. I need to carve out some time to build a quick start guide. Yes, you do, Caesar. But we all know that you're super busy, so don't push yourself too hard. Anne says to Caesar, I finally realized the filter is letting the highs pass through. I think that's how I'm trying to make it make sense. Joel says, my processing is getting a lot better so far. It's definitely a learning process. I do enjoy it, though. It takes time. It's like riding a bike or really anything else that you're learning, but this can be very technical, right? Especially with the post-production side, because the narration part is very mental and very physical, but then the post part is very like it's tedium, and there's a lot of little moving parts in terms of the effects and the timing and all of that stuff. So it is a lot. It's a lot. So be easy on yourself and just know that we all started in that same place. We all started at zero, and we all just slowly started to learn all the terminology, all the lingo, all the, it just comes with time. So just give yourself time. See if we can find some questions here. Angel says, the first time I plugged my mic in, it was backwards. Why do I sound so distant? Not the only one. Don't feel bad. Peak Variable says, with retail sample, I do a specific sample that rights holder wants, then ACX just does the first part and not the audio sample. I know. That's how long ago did they start doing that? About a year, maybe? And they just started to automatically just play like the first 5 minutes. So what's the point of us submitting a retail sample? Recommendations on getting it changed to desired segment. I don't think that there is. I think that's just something ACX is doing on their own, to be honest. So I don't know. I don't think there is a way to change it. If somebody knows a way to opt out, if there's a way to opt out of that, please let me know. Jim says owners' instruction manuals are usually in multiple languages and 3-point type, my experience. Oh, yeah. But most of the time they aren't really included anymore. Eric Grimes. Hey, Eric. How you doing? Hi, Angela and fellow Angelistas. I saved a lot of time when I finally stopped removing every little noise that the processing removes anyway. And you really shouldn't be spending that much time on like hyper focusing on every little thing in the background, because that is where having the spectral display can be sort of like a double-edged sword. It's a blessing and a curse, because it's a blessing where you can see the things that should be removed, but then at the same time, you see the things that you think should be removed, but ultimately are not audible or even noticed by the listener. So it gets really easy to over edit. I mean, really easy to over edit. And we shouldn't be hyper focusing on that stuff as much, because then we allow ourselves to just go through with a fine tooth comb and make it, we shoot for that perfect. You know how much I hate the word perfect. So just when you're editing and you're looking for the stuff to remove, only focus on your retakes, the large pauses, maybe perhaps when you stop to take a drink of water or to stretch or, whatever, take those out. And then anything that catches your eye that could be off-putting, maybe in the spectral display, maybe you see a little rumble at the bottom that was a truck going by, or the dog barking next door, or, whatever it was, the cat was snoring behind you, right? Look for that stuff, but don't nitpick every little thing, because ultimately 99% of that stuff that we're focusing in on and taking the listener's never going to even notice. Your job ultimately, as I said before, is to make an engaging story. And if the listener is locked in on the story you're telling, they're not going to notice half of what you're trying to remove. So, to Eric's point, let it go, Elsa. Let it go. Caesar says, regarding how they found me, that is a good question. I'm going to have to ask them. Either my SEO is working, or I was referred, or my cross promotion between platforms is working. Definitely find out, because it's working. And when something's working, you do more of that. So maybe you should add that question to your contact form. How did you find me? Right? I would definitely add that. Jim said, had the mic on backwards for a whole project, then noticed the volume was considerably lower, so I turned it around and that fixed it. Dave Brumfield says, hello, Angela from Hamilton, Ontario. Hello, David. Gregory says, hello there, fine folks. My first audiobook went live last night. Yay! Congratulations, Gregory. The process was a learning experience and I got better at it, but my challenge comes from everything coming in at -3 dB in Audition. How is that a challenge? You mean for the peak amplitude? Remember that standard in ACX, that peak amplitude of -3 dB is not the target. It's just the threshold, right? No volume or no dialogue can go past or be higher than -3 dB, cannot go any higher than that, but it's not the target. So if it's -3.56, or, that's -3 is not your target. So if you need to turn down the volume a bit, right? Even after you've normalized it to -3 and now it's -2 point something, just turn down the whole file volume, like select the whole file and turn down the volume like 0.3 dB, And then it should be under -3 and you'll be just fine, right? So keep that in mind too, that the peak amplitude of -3 is not the target. It's just a threshold. You cannot eclipse it. You cannot go louder than it. But you don't need to land. It doesn't have to be at -3. Anne says, looking back to my first book, I definitely jumped into audiobook land and then was forced to figure out, learn, YouTube, get help, and get that first book done. Good. But I mean, to your point, just do. Just go. Sorry, I'm having to move my legs around here. Go, right? Get all the learning, get all the support, get all the help. Learn all you can, but you have to be in the doing process while you're doing that so you can apply these new things that you're learning and discover perhaps maybe new things that you need to figure out along the way, and then learn so much and build your confidence in the doing and in proving to yourself that you can do it. That in and of itself is everything for confidence building. For sure. Brian says RX11 is amazing. It is amazing. The best plugins I think I've invested in for sure. Jim says, I hear that chewing gum helps keep mouth noise down, but you definitely don't want to be chewing gum. I guess it depends on the type of gum, but I definitely would not be chewing gum while you're recording an audiobook. Coffee is a big no-no for mouth noise, but as you all know, you'll have to pry it from my dead cold hands. Hence, isotope RX10 or RX11. And says, I'm sure that first book took me at least 10 times the PFH, but I learned a lot. You guys just got to jump. Same. I think everybody in their first audiobook has the same sentiment. It's your first book, it takes you 10 times longer than probably any other because it's a learning process. And that is everything. That experience, going through the whole process from A to Z, you have to go through it because there's a lot to learn from it. Caesar says, we're up to 11, but look, if you can't afford plugins, Adobe Audition is a post-production DAW. It has its own declicking and de-reverb tools. They're not like Isotope's unicorn magic, but And to Caesar's point, there's a lot of native plugins. There's a lot of resources, effects, functions within Adobe Audition all by itself that are there for voiceover audiobook production. And they keep adding more over the years. They've added a handful more that are, that have replaced plugins that I had to purchase. But they have yet to include a mouth declick. There's declicks and declips and other things in there that could work, but not as well as the mouth declick in Isotope and RX11. Not yet. But when they add that, then there might be a possibility that we don't have to buy plugins anymore. And some DAWs do. Some DAWs have natively their own effects in their software that work really, really well for a lot of what we need them to do. But Joel says, yes, just started with RX11 and mouth declick is fantastic. Word. It is. Definitely worth the investment. Jim says, what is the difference between the ACX profile and samples? I think what you mean by that, your profile is just a little bit about you perhaps and titles that you've completed, and then your samples are the way that the potential client can hear you. Brian says, is anyone here participating in the ACX voice replication program? And if so, have you been approved? No. I can see why companies would want to do this and offer this as these are just my opinions. You guys ultimately do what you want. but I can see how they can frame it as a benefit to the producer or to the narrator because it'll save them time, yada, yada, yada. But I mean, maybe it's just because I'm, Gen X, I'm one of the older generations, but I don't, maybe it's because Terminator movies, I don't know what it is, but I don't want to feed my information into an algorithm because ultimately I don't know where it's going to go, who's going to use it, if that's going to switch hands, then how is it going to be used, right? No, no, thank you. Ron says, is Isotope compatible with Audacity? I believe it is. I believe it is. And that goes for, that's a great, it's a great question for really before purchasing any plugin, do a little research and figure out, I mean, and when I say research, I mean, simply type it into Google. I mean, there really isn't any question you can't answer with Google. It does Audacity, what kind of plugins are compatible with Audacity, right? And it'll probably tell you VST or VST3 plugins. Okay, great. So then you go to waves.com and you're shopping for different plugins, and it'll tell you on that plugin's information page what kind of plugin it is, if it's VST or VST3 or both. And then that way you can kind of check to see if they're compatible, right? I mean, you can go about it that way too. But I think for the most part, most of the plugins that we talk about a lot here from Waves and Isotope are compatible with any DAW, as far as I know. Most DAWs, most of the big DAWs. And when I say big DAWs, I mean the ones most commonly used for our business, which is Audacity, Adobe Audition, Reaper, and Studio One, I believe. Any of the other DAWs you might want to double check first. But it's good practice to double check before you drop the money on anything to make sure that you can use it and you know how to use it. Or know someone that can show you how to use it before you purchase it, right? Good practice. Caesar says to Jim, your audio samples should go in your ACX profile. Anne says, here's a question. Is there a way to self-publish onto Audible, or is that why we all use ACX and other platforms? If you write a book and you put it into KDP, self-publish it, therefore it goes into Amazon for sale as a ebook or like a, print on demand kind of a book, then you can create your own audiobook for the book you wrote and publish it on ACX for Audible. So then essentially you're getting, just like our authors do, you can make money on the print book, the ebook, and the audiobook. Absolutely, you can. Phyllis says, what was the app that she mentioned that converts formats? Cloudconvert.com. Cloudconvert.com. 16 Voyeur says, what information should I include on my website? Your website in the beginning doesn't need to really be super built out or have a bajillion pages. I mean, it could be just a one-page website that has a picture of you, a little bit about you. Again, going back to just focusing on the equipment that you have, how available you are, maybe a little bit about if you have pets, if you have family, what you like to do on the weekends, a little bit about you personally. That makes you a little bit more approachable, relatable, right? A way to contact you, like a contact form or a business email address, and a way for them to hear you. You could build out like a SoundCloud account and put some demos on it and then copy the link to those demos and just paste it into the website page or embed it onto the website page, or upload your demo videos into YouTube and then link those YouTube videos into your website. But there has to be a way for them to hear you. So a picture of you, a little bit about you, a way to contact you, and a way for them to hear you. That's all you really need on your website to start. And then you can build it out more if you want to, but that's essentially all you need. Peak Parable says, one thing that has helped me at the beginning of every session, double check everything, is on, and working, including phantom power. Yes, make sure your phantom power is on. I now edit as I go, so if I encounter mistakes, the damage is mitigated. Like punch and roll. Yeah. Brian says, I am certainly not passing myself off as an expert here, but my understanding is that ACX is the only way to get an audiobook on Audible, and there has to be a copy of the book available on Amazon. As far as I know, ACX is the only one that is feeding audiobooks onto Audible, but the author can also go non-exclusive on ACX, so they can also upload or distribute their audiobook on other platforms as well. But to get onto Audible specifically, ACX, and I'm sure there's other internal ways of doing it that are not accessible to us. But yes, ACX directly feeds into Audible. But ACX and Audible are not the only audiobook distributors. There's tons of other ways to get audiobook work, if that's what you're asking. Caesar, who's got the spray? Somebody get the hose for Caesar. Seize the Day says, this question has to do with beginner DIY demos. Is background music necessary, or should it just be a dry read? Personal opinion, especially for audiobooks, no music, no sound effects. Now, if you have a commercial demo or video games or something like that, music and sound effects are probably nice. Just a nice touch. But I would have two different versions of your demo. I would have a dry read demo, and I would have a demo with sound effects and music. Depending on who you're sending it to is going to determine which one you use. But for audiobooks specifically, no music, no sound effects. Unless it's like a audio drama where there's a full cast and that's expected. But for just like a self-help book or your everyday audiobook, no effects. Anne says to Phyllis Fort, Cloud Convert is the website for converting formats. Lele, I am yet to set up ACX profile, but one day. Why not today? Literally, it takes a minute or two. It's not, compared to like Upwork or Fiverr, ACX is super fast. Especially if you already have an Amazon account. It's literally, it just converts, just takes all of your stuff, the information you already have in Amazon, and it uses that to create your account. You just have to add the little bit about me and your samples, really. It's super fast. Joy says, good morning, everyone, from sunny, cold Southfield, Michigan. At first, it took a little time, but I'm comfortable with the production part and have sour cream donuts. I don't know if I've ever had a sour cream donut. I bet you those are tasty. Hope you brought enough to share, Joy. Jim says, when I started off using the spectral display, I wiped out everything between sentences. Now I remove down to the noise floor level and leave that in. Sounds more normal that way. Yeah. Avoid over editing. Kyle Johnson says, it keeps us sounding like the humans we are. Yes, flaws make us human. We are not AI. Exactly. Phyllis wants to know, do you read the... No, you do not read the table of contents. I would say if you're looking to getting into audiobook narration, oh, come on, voice. If you're looking to get into audiobook narration, listen to audiobooks yourself. Sign yourself up for an Audible account. Listen to audiobooks on YouTube. I would stick with like an actual audiobook distribution platform like Audible and listen to audiobooks. You'll start to get an idea of what is typically included and what is not. But table of contents are never narrated for an audiobook, nor are references, glossaries, citations, references, stuff like that. Just like the actual meat or bulk body of the book itself is included. Caesar says to Jim, do bear in mind that everything you see in spectral view doesn't necessarily mean it's audible. You may be spending too much time in post-process than necessary. And that's kind of what I was saying earlier. I mean, it's if you can see it, the temptation is to attack it, remove it. But as was mentioned before, we're human, right? Remove the retakes, remove the nose fart, remove the mouth noise, remove the throat gurgles, remove the bracelets that you shouldn't be wearing on your arm out, right? Take that stuff out. But, breaths are fine. We breathe. Nobody even notices the breaths because we're used to hearing humans breathe when they talk. A click here and there from your mouth or your lips smacking together, again, is also very normal and we're used to it. Don't focus too much time on removing everything that makes you human from the narration file. You're just spending way too much time doing something that's just ultimately going to do more damage than good. Caesar says, if you're a little under 3 dB, that's fine. You don't need to push everything up to negative 3 dB. Important thing is that you hit your loudness target, negative 20 dB for total RMS. Keep in mind, Caesar, that we're talking to people that more or less are just getting started. So throwing in the luffs is more information and it might be more confusing than helpful. God, I wish my voice would just go back to normal already. My cup of tea says this is more of an audio engineering cue and maybe should ask in Discord, but why notate record sound in negative dB? Just that is the way that sound is calculated or measured in dB and negative dB. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm missing your question. Caesar says, my cup of tea is because the decibel scale is logarithmic. Of course, Caesar has an answer. And as such, uses a reference level with 0 dB representing the threshold of human hearing. Thus, negative dB values are below that reference. There you go. You can start calling Caesar Bill Nye the Science Guy. Caesar Nye, you have to think of a good one. You have to think of a good name for Caesar. Caesar says, the only thing I want to replicate are my genes, not my voice. Okay. Cup of tea says, good to know. Thank you. I'm sure I have more questions about it. PSVR, hey, Paul. Paul brought the donuts. Thank you, Paul. Joy says, the better thing to do is check with Audacity support section first. Yes, mom look. Bye, Jim. Enjoy your lunch. Hey, Mr. Gibbs, I haven't seen you in a while. Is there another platform besides ACX that you can get audiobook work? Yes, tons of them. The best way to get audiobook work is to be present on social media, is to market for it on social media, make connections on social media. You'll eventually start to make connections with indie authors, publishers. I mean, social media is where it's at. But then there's also other platforms like Ahab, Findaway, right? Literally go into Google, open up Google, type in audiobook distributors. I always have trouble with that word. Distributors, audiobook distributors. And it'll give you a list or you'll see tons of them. There's tons of ways to get audiobook work. ACX is just one. Marilee Ann says, thanks for the response. Wanted some insight to the mass tech learning curve. Always interested in VO work, but new tech equipment would be ultimately a necessary expensive investment. It is, but it doesn't have to be expensive. You can always buy your equipment secondhand, right? And then upgrade. I think that's pretty much how we all got into this, with something relatively on the inexpensive side and then just upgraded as we started to build our income and our client base. Then we would just upgrade as we go. Lamar says, happy late birthday, lady. Thank you so much, Lamar. You're a sweetheart. Jim says, I thought you were going to lunch. Jim says, Once heard of a video producer who let 15 frames of sound go above 0. He hasn't heard from that client since. Phyllis Fort says, is my face red? Of course I should be listening to audiobooks. Duh. Yes, it's not just for personal enjoyment, but also for, business purposes, right? Professional development and personal enjoyment. Absolutely. Mary Leanne says, I find audiobooks with minor breath and human pauses adds character to the actual character being narrated. Without them, it is AI and takes away from actual human VO narration. Exactly. Lele says, Caesar Nye Da Sriracha Guy. Oh, that's okay. Hang on. That needs applause. Perfect. This is the perfect name for him. Caesar Nye. Okay, hang on. I got to screenshot that so I don't forget. Boop. Caesar Nye Da Sriracha Guy. I love it. Oh, God, that was a fast hour. All right, so I think there was some great information shared here today. I really appreciate you guys showing up and offering your insight, asking your questions. I will be back next Tuesday, same bat time, same bat channel, Tuesday at 12 p.m. EST for another live session. If you have something that you want to talk about, want to learn more about, want to get multiple perspectives on, not just mine, but everybody else here in the chat. I mean, this is a group effort. It takes a village sometimes, right? If you have a question or a topic you want to learn more about, then put it in the comments below. If you're watching in Team Replay or if you're still here live with me, put it in the comments and it could be something that we talk about here in the future. But this is why we do this. So ask your questions and let's get together and figure it out and offer some perspectives. But until then, listen to your audiobooks. Make sure that your microphone is turned the correct way. Possibly remove all the distracting bottles of sriracha from your studio. Unless you're using it for like sinus clearing or something. I don't know. But anyway. Until then, I will see you guys all next week. And some of you I'll see on Thursday in the Platinum group. So I'll see you guys all then. Bye.